Father God, you're the living God, and we ask that you breathe upon us your living spirit. Be with us, be with these fine ministers. They're fantastic. Please bless them in their ministry. You're coming soon. Can't wait to see you face to face. Now be with us. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Dinosauria. Did you know? A lot of stuff was going on. 1831 to 1836. You know this one. Your pastors. Millerite movement. Also, 1831, 1836, Darwin, HMS Beagle. So when you guys were studying in seminary and other things, Millerite movement, I was in college studying about Darwin. And so anyway, it was like, whoa, look, it lines up. For everything God has, Satan's got a counterfeit. 1842, Sir Richard Owen, he comes up with this thing because he's recognized these big bones and stuff in England. And in 1842, he calls that Dinosauria. Really cool. So it's not been around for hundreds and hundreds of years as far as calling it dinosaurs. It's just been around that time when we were getting ready to go home. And so 1844, Darwin writes his first essay on evolution. 1844, The Great Disappointment. 1848, The Sabbath Truth. Remember Rachel Oakes Preston? Yeah. And so in 1848, we also had this spiritual movement with the Fox sisters. So you wonder today, this is like, is there things going on today for everything that God has, Satan's got a counterfeit? Or maybe Satan came up with a counterfeit and God has truth. So let's explore today. Worldviews on dinosaurs. Okay, unless we get a time machine, we'll never know. There's one worldview, God created the dinosaurs. Okay, I personally have no idea. Did God create the dinosaurs or was it something else? So I'm just laying that out there. So if you want to catch me later and say God created the dinosaurs, I honestly don't know. So here we go. Moving along. The Lost World, Jurassic Park. About 20 years ago, I was with the Smithsonian Institute as a visiting scientist. And so I love the Smithsonian. And it's really cool because you can go and in the side doors, you can go and there's special little keypads. You punch a little code and this little wall will open up in the museum. And that's where the fun is. That's where the magic happens. I don't know if you can see this particular slide here where all these specimens, there's so much behind the scenes at the Smithsonian. These were the two professors or two researchers that I was working with. Dr. Frederick Baer, Professor Emeritus, worked with Gorgonians and octocorallians, came up with prostaglandin A while working at the University of Miami, working with the stuff with the heart. Dr. Stephen Cairns, he's currently the curator of zoology at the Smithsonian Institute. It was really cool. A few years ago, I thought my kids were old enough, so we went to the Smithsonian, and I showed them things on display that we had collected and everything. So anyway, that's kind of fun. Okay, on this particular trip, my brother, he's an atheist. And so, anyway, I was like, we made our way. I asked him, what do you want to see? Because he went up with me to these meetings, and I was like, what do you want to see? And he goes, I want to see the dinosaurs. And I'm thinking, I don't want to see that. You know, I mean, it's like, I want to see other things, but whatever you want to see is fine with me. We go to the dinosaur exhibit. I noticed this disproportionate body size and arm length of the T-Rex. The only organism that's close to that on our planet is a kangaroo, but even its arms are more proportional to body size. These arms, honestly, they don't make any sense whatsoever. I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would evolution, because I was struggling with it at the time still, why would evolution favor these little arms? It doesn't make any sense. And if you notice, this girdle part right here, I looked at it and I told my brother, that's bird-like. You know, I took field natural history and ornithology as an undergrad, and I was like, that's bird. And I knew that the bones were lightweight, like birds, hollow and lightweight. And I'm like, I told my brother, I was like, you know, on this thing, it's like dinosaurs, they have hollow bones like birds, and some of these things also, like with birds, like they have these gizzards with stones in them to grind food. But notice they have these gastroliths. Gastro means digestive tract and lith, a rock, but anyway, gastroliths within. And so it's like, wait, that's bird-like. I was wondering, about this time, they were thinking that dinosaurs were warm-blooded as opposed to cold-blooded. And this was championed by Jack Horner and Bob Barker. Not this Jack Horner, not that Bob Barker. Remember Bob Barker? So, not those two, okay? Yeah, there you go. This Jack Horner and this Bob Barker. Yeah. You know, I told my brother that I would not be surprised if T-Rex had mostly bird DNA. That's where I was with it. Look at it, it's hollow. The hollow bones, it's got the bones that look similar to birds and gastroliths in some birds, some dinosaurs. So Anyway, I left it like that. Now, just to back up just a fuzz, Gregor Mendel, father of modern genetics, presented in, these are important dates, okay, important dates. March 1865, he presented his first work on Mendelian genetics. 1866, he published a paper. So he gave a talk in 1865, and he published a paper in 1866. Really, really, really important. His work would go unnoticed for the next 35 years. So Mendel's work at first was rejected by the scientific community because it was an inheritance factor. He didn't name it genetics. Someone else did, like in the early 1900s. And so, but in 1953, Watson and Crick and Rosalind Franklin, they came up with DNA, backbone of inheritance. So natural selection, what would be the evolutionary advantage of such arms on a dinosaur? Jack Horner, he said, I know for certain T-Rex was 100% scavenger. How do you know that? How do you know? And so it was like, he said that these organisms would just come up on something dead, and then what he said, it would take these little claws, and if there was a dead dinosaur it wanted to eat, the T-Rex would bend over and then use those little claws as a steak knife, and then back up, take a bite, and swallow it. Exactly. I thought it was ridiculous because you got those big teeth on the T-Rex. I'm thinking chomp, chomp, swallow. You know, it's like, and that's why I put the shark up here, is like, does a great white shark come up and just kind of hit a seal with its fin, you know, and then hit it again, tenderize it a little bit? No, it has those big choppers. Chomp, chomp, swallow. We've seen Shark Week. We know. So... Now look at this one. Here's Gary. I love Gary Larson. Okay, Far Side. He goes, hey, I'm trying to pass the potatoes. Remember, my forearms are just as useless as yours. Even the scientists, you know, they make fun of the T-Rex and his little arms. Okay, so there you go. Steven Spielberg rejected Jack Horner's idea of the dinosaur as being, or the T-Rex as being a scavenger, to the point that in Jurassic Park, the original, he had one of the characters dress up like Jack Horner and had him eaten by a dinosaur while he was running from it. So, true story. Okay. When I returned to the C Lab, I was impressed to read Genesis, Deuteronomy, and another book. It took me forever, and I got it right here. Look, 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 look. It's right here. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3 and 4. I'm so ignorant. I promise I am. And I know some of you guys could be a witness to that. Look, I would read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then I would read Genesis, Exodus. Oh no, we hit the begats. I was totally lost. You know, I didn't know how to pronounce those things, so I'd go back to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so, anyway, I was impressed to read Genesis and Deuteronomy, and then, anyway, I don't know how I came up with this book. Not a clue. I'm going to say it's a God thing, okay? But of all things, catch this. So I'm reading Spiritual Gifts, and watch this, Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 34. This was written in 1864. As Adam came forth from the hand of his Creator, he was more than twice as tall as men now living upon the earth. Eve was not quite as tall as Adam. Her head reached a little above his shoulders. We've read that. And then Patriarchs and Prophets, it says, Adam's height was much greater than that of men who now inhabit the earth. Eve was somewhat less stature. Deuteronomy, is there evidence in the Bible for people of great stature? It says, this is the American King James Version. It says, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Wow. Behold, his bedstead, his bed is a bedstead of iron. Wow, he had to have some weight on him, otherwise it would break a normal bed. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. That's about 13 feet, 6 inches long, and 6 feet wide. To me, there's biblical evidence of huge, huge humans and everything. And Ellen White says that twice as tall. Oh, look, I'm short, but twice my height would put you at 11. That's pushing you about 12 feet plus. You get it? So anyway, in the Bible, and I was like, whoa, this is terrific. Okay, look, the most complete T-Rex skeleton, 40 feet long, 13 feet tall at the hips. That's the tallest point. So here's a picture. Like, think about it. Adam, King Og, T-Rex would have been around the same height. Consider Adam and Eve. Who taught Adam and Eve? Jesus. Isn't that cool? You're perfect. You're perfect. And the creator of the universe is teaching you in the garden. So the first job of Adam and Eve, you know what it is. You name the animals. Now look, let's say somebody gives you a new puppy or a kitten, right? And you call that thing, let's just say it's Fred. And so you got Fred. And so you go to bed that night. You're so tickled to death. You finally got your puppy or your kitten. And so you get to bed and you named it Fred. You get up the next morning and you look at that puppy or that kitten and you go, what did I name you? No, you would remember. It means so much to you. And so I believe Adam and Eve, super intelligent. That was just a sign, I think, showing you the animals. You named the animals. You got to see, visually see. God created us with all these cool senses. You see, you smell, you can touch the animals. You gave it a name. And what I share with and I'm sorry, I don't want to go over. I know I've got some time. But anyway, it's like, wouldn't it be really cool? I told my students, we get to heaven, and we're standing there. We've met Jesus, amazing, face to face. And so sometime later, it's like you want to see this animal, and you see it, and it's that day. And this animal's approaching you, and you're standing there. I'm there with you for some bizarre reason. I'm with you. And this animal comes over, and you hold out your hand, and it licks your hand, and you go, what a cool giraffe. Wow. And so, anyway, you notice there's a presence behind you. A person goes, it's actually a giraffe. And I was like, what? And we turn around and we look up. And there's Adam and Eve. And they go, giraffe. That's what we named it over time. You guys called it a giraffe. You remember Shabbat, Sabbath, Sabbato? Kind of the same thing. Wouldn't it be cool when we get to heaven that some of the names that we call the animals now was what was originally named in the garden? I got chills. It's super cool. As a biologist, I guess, so the rest of you guys will be hanging out with the tree of life and stuff. So when the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. Okay, so end time stuff. So it is in the days of Noah, Sodom and Gomorrah, the things. Satan can do all things except for what? Create life. So what's just short of creating life? Modifying. Can you change it? A little bit? Now catch this. This is gold. But if there was one sin above another which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation. That's blending of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 64. When was it written? 1864. This is before, remember March 8, 1865 is when Mendel gave his first talk. 1865. This is published 1864. Ellen White is the the mother of genetics. You get it? A crime of amalgamation, the blending of traits. I'm just throwing it out there. And then Mendel, he did his first paper 1866. I'm just saying. So every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. The confused species, which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed by the flood. Possible? What I thought was interesting is that, again, I just mentioned this about the works. How difficult is it to genetically modify an organism? You take E. coli and a glow-in-the-dark jellyfish, a plasmid, and at CA, I've done this for a few years with the students, where we take a gene from a jellyfish, a plasmid, insert it in E. coli, a bacterium, and then wait a couple of days, and under black light condition, those bacteria will glow under black light. It's easy. You don't need a supercomputer. We do it, and we're not as intelligent as Adam and Eve. What about the antediluvians? Just saying. Then we destroy it. Consider T-Rex. All right. 13 feet tall, 40 feet long, great. Okay, you remember all that Happy Meal stuff, after 6 months, it's still a Happy Meal. You remember that? They took those pictures, time-lapse, fossilized ribs. Okay, I'm sorry, but this one I couldn't help, but, it's like a Big Mac, right there. It's a tire print, like fossilized. Okay, moving along. For everything that Satan's doing to mess up our world, truth comes out. Let's see what happens with this. Dr. Schweitzer, she was working with, remember Jack Horner? Jack Horner, world's foremost paleontologist. And so Schweitzer, she's got her doctorate in biochemistry, but in the summer she likes to hang out and dig up dinosaurs. Cool. She's been working on a couple of summers expeditions with Jack Horner out in Montana at the Hills Creek Formation. And so she approaches Jack Horner and they're friends. And so she says, hey, could I take this drill and drill into the femur of this T-Rex and see what the minerals are like in the middle of that bone and Jack Horner goes nuts. He cusses her up one side and down the other, says, you call yourself a scientist? You're a lousy excuse of a scientist. You're pathetic. There are only 11 of these T-Rexes known in existence, and you want to drill into this femur? It's extraordinarily rare. You're an idiot. I mean, he just let her have it, and she felt really, really bad. And on this one's so she felt bad and she walked away. The next day, they finish wrapping. This is it. They wrap it in plaster of Paris, okay, for transport. This is actually what's happening. They take a sling, they put it around that bone, and they use a helicopter to lift that T-Rex femur up out of the pit. This is a helicopter, that's that bone, and they lift it up. And so what happened is that the femur that's wrapped in the plaster of Paris slid out of the sling, dropped hundreds of feet in the air, hit a rock, and busted in two. It's a God thing. I know it's a God thing. I can just imagine we get to heaven and a little angel with its little feathers just took and, there it goes. Why? Well, that's probably what Horner was saying as it was plummeting to the earth. Why? So there is a reason why. And Horner looked at Schweitzer as he stormed off. It was his day to storm off, disappointed. And he goes, I guess you can get your sample now. And he left. So she did. She went to get the sample. She noticed something. She could smell something that ran afoul. To her surprise, Dr. Schweitzer found soft tissue. If it's millions of years old, this should not be happening. Thousands of years old, yeah. Millions of years old, no. National Geographic, what Dr. Schweitzer found instead of rock was evidence of heme. Remember hemoglobin for your blood, heme group? In the bones, additional support for the idea that they were red blood cells. Heme is a part of hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen, and red blood cells gives it color. And she says, it got me real curious as to exceptional preservation. She says, if particles of that one dinosaur were able to hang around for 65 million years, maybe the textbooks were wrong about fossilization. Maybe it's not 65 million years old. Now, what do you think the evolution scientist would do? Would the evolution scientists, would they then say, you know what, we doubt this is true, but we're going to apply scientific discipline, we're going to employ the scientific method, and we're just going to check through the scientific method, and then we will see what the conclusions are? No, what do you think they said? Impossible. We will never believe. Those are faith terms. Is that like evolution's a faith science then? We will never believe, impossible, we will never believe that the soft tissue could be from a T-Rex because the fossil is 65 million years old, period. We're never going to believe this. So they sent samples around the world, and guess what? The test results confirm Schweitzer's analysis. Independent labs around the world confirmed this. I don't have a slide for this, but they actually had a cry that went out for the world museums, to open their collections, that samples may be taken, that maybe there's more soft tissue. So again, this is, you can even see the red blood cell here. This is more big news about Schweitzer and about all this stuff. But anyway, there's a red blood cell in a blood vessel. A lot of red blood cells in the soft tissue. Isn't that awesome? Praise God. So evolutionary biologists, what you can do is reverse, I can tell you about it sometime, but if you have a protein, you can figure out what is the DNA sequence that made the protein. They didn't find the DNA. And guess what they found? They said, modern birds, reptiles, and amphibians. Modern. And remember, that's what I told my brother. I would not be surprised if it was mostly bird DNA. And this is what they found. They said there is more than a 90% probability that the grouping of T-Rex with living birds is real. And this is from a scientist from Harvard University, Dr. Asara and Cantley. Dinosaur soft tissue sequence similar to chicken proteins. Isn't that crazy? All right, and it gets a little crazier. Wow. Jurassic Park, when you had some of you guys may not have seen Jurassic Park, but the idea is you had some amber, some pine sap that went over an insect, and anyway, the genetic material, like with the diverticulum, the blind sac from the proboscis, there's dinosaur DNA in the blood. So that was the idea of Jurassic Park. So will we ever have a real-life Jurassic Park? Will we? Here's Jack Horner again, and he's looking, remember, that looks very dinosaur-like. And so he wrote a book, How to Build a Dinosaur, in 2009. And he describes his plan to recreate a dinosaur genetically by nudging the DNA of a chicken. So in the days of Noah, so shall the He wrote another book, Chickenosaurus. They're already nudging the tail. This is what they've found so far. They're working on the hands right now. They've got the tail of a dinosaur right now. So in the days of Noah. He said, this was a TED Talk. You can see it online. You can go and see. I wish they came up with another name besides Chickenosaurus, but hey, he picked it, right? So Chickenosaurus. And he says just a few more years wouldn't take much, and he can finish the job with a dinosaur that acts, walks, and looks like a dinosaur, but hatches from a chicken egg. Instead of finding perfectly preserved DNA in amber, they're reactivating chicken DNA. So it was there all along. And he says the hands are probably the easiest to deal with. The hardest part so far has been the tail. And that's what they're working on, genetic markers. Horner believes his team can create a dinosaur within the next 5 years. So in the days of, there you go. And so, anyway, there's another part that gets into genetically modified organisms. That's what we're doing now. You go to the grocery store, 99% of whatever you buy has been genetically modified. So it's there. All right. So thank you for your time today.